G'day, welcome to Drawing the Owl, episode 11, talking history. My name is Sidney, Icarus. I am the bits that get into your keyboard that you've then got to shake out and then like vacuum off your desk of the RPG community. I have with me my good friend, Ryan. Hi, Ryan.
Hi. I'm the ascended chatbot of the RPG community, probably.
Yes. Oh my God, I love stupid nicknames. You're my favorite. You are actually my first person I've hung with on this that has done like a cool nickname. So props to you. You're my favorite.
You heard it here. There's no more competition. I win.
Ryan is my favorite ascended chatbot. Ryan's a big part of the ASPAC Gauntlet community and is one of my favorite people to game with because he has an incredible amount of interesting knowledge on what RPGs like feel like. Like you're really good at getting to the feels of things. Today, though, we're going to talk about how we feel about history. So let's go for context, I guess. So you know, Ryan, that I'm doing a game about. So Homefront is a game about intimacy. It's about connections between people, and it's about like kind of watching those connections stretch and hit their edges, and also watching those connections be a valuable thing that like saves people. I believe you're doing some game design at the moment. Are you happy to talk about any of that at the moment?
I don't really have anything worth sharing yet, but in a line that'll probably be interesting only to Lauren, my first response was to try to smash PBTA and the Wayward Children series together, and I'm not sure it works at all, but it's entertaining to try to kludge them together.
I don't know the Wayward Children series. What's
when we start talking about Jack and Jill feels, it's that.
Yeah. Right. Okay, cool. So what's like
and I know she's doing something different. I mean, similar, but coming at it from a completely different angle, which is cool.
Yeah. Is that reference Girl Underground, or is that?
No. Cool. It's Every Heart a Doorway. Oh, wait. No, yes. Girl Underground is her thing. Yes. I know names of things.
Okay, so what's like how does history fit into the game that you're making? Why is history important to you?
I don't have any idea really yet, except that it's important to me to establish that characters have some shared background to avoid that whole first episode you meet in a tavern, none of you care about each other thing. And also from non-tabletop role-playing, one of the things I hate so much is when you have the one player who has to be constantly coaxed and coddled into working with the group, and having the bonds up front says, you're with them and you want to be. Tell me why. This isn't optional.
Yep.
Which is great, because it immediately says, that's not an option. Get it out of your system somewhere else. You got to play with people.
Okay, so let's there's some really interesting things there. So let's drill into that. So the reasons we need history, like why are we putting this in our games? So we're saying the first one is shared backstory, pre-existing connections. And the second thing is
like as a team, damn it.
Yeah, player motivation.
Or if you're rivals, I guess.
That's one of the establishing connections, or no, I've already used connections. Establishing teamwork, or what's the opposite of teamwork?
Or I don't know, like shared motivation to some degree, because even if it's I want to sabotage this person, it's still a reason not to wander off and do something else entirely.
That's a really good point. Okay, let's see if I can make this one column without fucking the rest of my. I can. Beautiful. Okay, cool. So that's two big reasons. Do you know any other reasons can you think of any other reasons that history is really useful in these games, or like what you've gotten out of it when you're playing?
One thing I like about it is that answering those questions gives you an idea of who your character is, because I know I've been in games where I didn't really get my character until like 4 months in.
Right.
And especially if you're in a 1 or 4 session game, you don't have that kind of space, so you need to hit it really quick.
So one of the things that I talk about a lot is like verbs, is like character is found in the verbs. So if you're the gun lugger, the fact that you have a lot of guns doesn't define you. It's the fact that you use a lot of guns, like the fact that violence is how you solve problems, right? So that's one of the things. It says here is a situation that you're a part of that helps define your character. So it's like pre-existing verbs. That's really, really cool. What else? Oh, you know what I think it's really useful for? Like tone and setting creation. Like the Gunlugger one in Apocalypse World is like, one of you left me bleeding and did nothing to save me, and one of you like got me out of some serious shit. Both of those set like a really good tone for Apocalypse World. Does that grok with you?
Yeah, I'm just thinking back to the one Apocalypse World game I played. It was the Master D. I don't really remember what my questions were.
Oh,
I do remember that someone's bond with me was really strong because I was the prettiest one around, and that was all that mattered, which was entertaining.
That's a Gunlugger one. It's so good. Who's the smartest and the prettiest? It's my fave. So what games have you played where like history really clicked for you, or debts or bonds or whatever it's called? For me, while you're thinking, like Dungeon World's really good at, as you said, getting past the you meet in a tavern bit. Like bonds are really good for that because it creates pre-existing adventure. Some of them are really weak in Dungeon World for that. Like there are ones that are like, well, for example, one that's really strong is I sang songs of this person well before I met them, because that implies verbs, it implies adventure, it implies they've done something. But there are some of them that are like, I always think of the Alas for the Awful Sea example that Haley gave, just because it was so funny when she said it about like, I've convinced this person I can talk to birds or something. Blank smells more like prey than predator or something is one of the druid ones, and I think it's really weak because it doesn't have that obligation or that previous.
Yeah, that's a fact, not an action, really.
Yeah. Okay. Action, not fact. I really like that. That's a really, really, really good way.
And I'm not thinking of a game that's solid on all fronts to me, because like Space Farm vs. Moonicorn has some really good ones in where it's like, I owe this person because of this, or I can't think of them. I might have to pull up my character sheet again. But it also has a mechanic where I was playing Moonicorn, so I can't really talk to anybody else, but where you can spend the bonds to help people. And I was going, but I don't want to do that because like I had a Thor and Loki sibling relationship with someone. I didn't want to like spend my memories to help her. That was terrible.
Yes, both. Fellowship has that problem really badly with Esquire, which is that like you're meant to generate these bonds and then spend them, and instead of making you feel like the kind of person that's connected with everyone, it makes you feel really flippant with your emotions because you're like,
yeah. That's what I was thinking too, because it was supposed to be the, you care so much about people, you're constantly attaching and everything, but I was going, I'm just using people for my ends, and that's a really non-Moonicorn thing.
Oh, dope. Like the feeling behind the mechanic there is like, yeah, you care so much about achieving things that you'll burn your relationship with people. Ryan, you're really good at this.
If it was a rivalry one, that would sort of make sense, because like I had one where it was I owe this person, and I guess I could help them and then not owe them. But for someone, it was like we grew up together and are basically siblings. So if I help them, we don't have a relationship anymore. It didn't make any sense at all.
Right.
But if I was playing a character who was really just kind of out for their own thing, I guess it would. But I haven't done that yet.
Blake made a really good point in chat too that I'll actually put the link in here for you if you want to.
Oh, I was going to go. There's a chat. Oh my goodness.
Characters cannot evolve with the story if the players can't cooperate at the story level, which is like a really so it's not just for it's not about getting the characters together as much as it's about getting the players together. Although getting the characters together kind of does both. There's an interesting meta thing there. I'd need more time to drill into that. So I really like that about not wanting to spend them or burn them, because like, so Dungeon World does this thing with resolving bonds, and I've never found it satisfying. Have you played much Dungeon World, Ryan?
I've played one game of Dungeon World ever that Blake Ryan ran for me and Tomes, but we didn't get too deep into it because it was basically Wipeout with goblins.
Oh my god, Wipeout with goblins is my fave. We should play that one day. So the way bonds works is bonds is the stat you roll to aid someone. They're short factual statements, like I said there about. Actually, let's bring up a couple. Let's do this. But the big thing about bonds is that at the end of the session, if a bond has been resolved, which means if you look at it and you say, okay, this isn't something we want to focus on the story level anymore, you gain XP and remove it from your sheet, which has two problems. One, it's this weird incentivization of like, oh no, you can reword it. So there's no, it doesn't feel like growth. It doesn't feel like resolution to me. And I'm not sure
those
why.
mechanics feel to me like I'm losing memories to advance, which is such a weird feeling that I keep avoiding it in game.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I don't want to lose the bond. I want to maybe change the wording as it adapts or something.
All right, let's do some application window dungeon world. All right, so at the moment, this is the wizard's bonds. Fill in the name of one of your companions in at least one. Oh, that's actually an interesting point that, God, what's his name? The guy that does the Apocalypse World day by day. I'll look it up in a sec because I've actually got tabs that I want to go to. He talks about player choice, about like how so for example, we're looking at these at the wizard. If you don't want someone to be keeping an important secret from you, you can just choose not to use that bond. How do you feel about that?
I mean, I feel like someone can be keeping an important secret from you regardless. I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess I don't see bonds as choosing what you do and don't want in so much as saying that I want this to be our hook.
Yeah, so it's like
because like if you don't pick will play an important role, that doesn't mean no one's going to be important.
That's super fucking true. That is super true. Okay, so you've got these 3 bonds. These are the wizard bonds. I brought them up because I wanted to mention something. I wanted to mention talking about removing memories, right? So blank will play an important role in the events to come. I have foreseen it, and then you pass that moment, and you're like, oh, this is the moment you were destined for. You cross out that bond, and it goes away from your sheet, and it stops mattering. It's something we stop looking at.
Yeah, which seems really weird to me because I know that I, as a player, would be going, I totally foresaw this, and you probably owe everything to me because I tend to play arrogance. And that having it just disappear seems really odd.
So one of the things we can do is the bond that you rewrite can be about that still, but it means that you're kind of stuck in that channel. So we could rewrite blank. So Ryan will play an important role in the events to come. I have foreseen it. And then I write, I'm going to use Theo because it's easier. Theo will play an important role in the events to come. I have foreseen it. And then we do the thing. Theo does the ritual, whatever. And then I change it to Theo has proven his power. I will hold him in reverence or something like that. But which is fine. But it means that we're not talking about our choice is either stay in that section or completely disregard it and move on to something new. We don't get the option to like move on to something new while maintaining that memory. Interesting.
Yeah, and I don't have good answers for that, but it seems like, I don't know, something about me doesn't want to scratch out or erase bonds so much as like move them to a no longer relevant column or something, just because it feels like burning memories again.
Yeah. So burning memories is my favorite burning wheel supplement, by the way. So my question is, the reason this is coming up is because bonds are getting interacted with throughout the game. Is it important that history or bonds is a stat that we interact with, or should it just be? So here's the question. We've said there are 4 reasons we need history, which is shared backstory, player motivation, generating verbs, and establishing setting and tone. There's kind of this implied 5th reason, which is as a stat. So Hex is a stat for aiding in Apocalypse World. Bonds is used to aid in Dungeon World and is also used as an XP trigger, that sort of stuff, right?
Yeah, so I really don't like using bonds as a stat because I feel like in most cases it just adds a flat +1, in which case just say roll +1. And in other cases, it's just kludgy and weird, and I don't like it.
Have you played Fellowship?
I played Fellowship with you.
That's right. Cool. I
It's
played
nice
so
to
many
know I
games with
wasn't
you.
memorable.
No, you were the spider. I remember. So
The one
in
instance where a bond type thing makes total sense to me is
yeah,
in
please.
Worldwide Wrestling, where it's heat, because then it's just the more chemistry you have with someone, the better you are at doing stuff.
Yes, but from
But to go back
memory,
to your point, yes.
yeah. So let's talk about heat. So because all I was going to say about Fellowship is that the bonds economy in Fellowship, I don't think we really hit it that much, but it wasn't everything I wanted in a game.
Yeah, I never actually used it because partly I didn't totally understand how they would come into play, and partly it seemed to be you burn bonds to do things, and I don't want to burn the bonds.
So, one thing I like about Worldwide Wrestling is that heat. So, heat in Worldwide Wrestling represents the perceived chemistry between two wrestlers by an imaginary audience, right?
Yeah, and you're establishing questions about like this person is afraid of me or this person's my buddy backstage, but we don't show it in the ring and everything. Give you some starting heat, which makes sense to me.
Yeah,
Unless I'm completely misrepresenting the rules because
I'm just
I might
bringing
have
up
forgotten everything.
the anti-hero. Here we go. Um, so I haven't played Worldwide Wrestling, which I consider a personal failing. It was meant to be one of my Gauntlet Con games last year, but I'd played like 15 games and it was not much. Okay, heat questions. This is the anti-hero. Who did I have to kick the shit out of to show how badass I am? With whom do I have a reluctant? Oh, that's another interesting question I want to ask. We'll talk about that in a sec. Who wishes they were as cool as me? So wait, how do we generate heat by these? So these questions exist, but how do they tie into numbers? Do you know?
Yeah, you ask those questions and either pick someone or someone volunteers, and then you get +1 heat with them to start.
Oh, so it's just
And
it's a flat plus. Okay, interesting.
yeah, and then certain moves benefit from heat, and if you have 0 heat with someone, then your matches are going to be kind of flat and uninteresting, and it's just good for building up who you are outside the ring.
Okay, interesting. Very interesting. So, who did I debut with and leave behind? Who's taking me under their wing? Who's just okay? Cool. So this is interesting because this is bringing up my next question already, which is see how who's this? The golden boy is asking who's taken me under their wing as like it's like a second person outward facing question. The question is should history be like Dungeon World where you ask the player what is your truth and you write it down, or should it be outward facing like that? Should you ask the table, hey, which one of you did I have to kick the shit out of to show how badass I am? Or should it be, I kicked the shit out of blah to show how badass I am?
So, knowing me, regardless of how it's phrased, I'm going to say, so it says that I kick the shit out of someone. Does someone want to have their shit kicked? And I really like those that kind of encourage you to just ask the table, because to me, they're a lot more fun when someone volunteers or buys in than when you just announce, so I beat you up once, deal with it.
Okay. I'm a huge believer in that as well. I agree with you, which is that putting it out there. So putting it out there is a consent issue more than anything else. But that also,
yeah, like I was playing the gatekeeper in there, and part of it was the who am I gatekeeping for, and who's kind of worried about me, and that kind of stuff. I can't remember their questions exactly, and none of those were ones that I felt comfortable putting other players in.
okay.
Without, I mean, even the one that's like we're buddies backstage. I was going, I don't want to tell you your buddies if you were going, oh man, I must destroy this wrestler, because that's a fun angle too.
Yeah. Because there's also a thing about truth, isn't there? Which is that in Dungeon World, their opinions. their blah smells more like prey than predator. That's not a fact. That's how I perceive the world, right? The bard one's a little bit different in that I sung stories of etc. before I ever met them. And then if you say that and put that on me, I want to be like, well, I was actually really hoping to be like an unknown person from like a cloistered wizard society. And you're like, nope, sung stories about you.
Sung stories of the most boring wizard ever.
Yeah.
You just happen to fit the bill.
Oh, Greg got his toothbrush, went to the sink. Cool.
And ones like smells like prey or whatever, I'd feel sort of comfortable just going, you do. This could totally clash with your character concept, but for some reason, you smell like prey. But they're also just not very interesting to me, so I don't feel like they would come up all that much.
Yes, that's and Haley made in the last chats that we had, which is she said like obligation is a really big key. I'm going to write obligation down in the reasons we need history, because obligation is a really good way to generate that shared conflict or motivation, which is, I am beholden to protect blah is a very good hook to generate character interaction. I have convinced blah I can talk to birds doesn't generate that same demanding of action.
To use another example, in Sea of Stars, one of the dramatic conflicts we had was that I've saved character X's but several times in the last week, and I'm getting really sick of it, which again implies relationship and ongoing action more than I convinced my Dr. Birds, which is actually awesome because that also implies back into interaction, but not in the same way.
They kind of need to reach in both directions, don't they? So one of the good things about I have saved Blah's butt and I'm getting sick of it is that it reaches backwards into the past and also reaches forwards into the future. When I used to tell people how to do Dungeon World bonds, I would say, write a fact or a belief and then write what you're going to do about it. And that would do that. It would do that, reach backwards, reach forward. So maybe there's something about that. So let's look at...
yes, I heartily second that.
Past and future. Okay, cool. Boy, I've got a lot of work to do on my history. I'm so unhappy with my history stuff at the moment.
For whatever it's worth, I felt like they did a good job of establishing shared backstory and some shared opinions, not necessarily both ways, but like how characters feel about each other at the start.
Yeah.
But it still retained that spending bonds aspect, which is so weird to me.
Yeah, I've thrown that whole thing away now. I'll show you what I got now, which is so this is cool. This hasn't really gone out, and like I said, I'm not super happy with it, but it's fine. Let's get some bigger zoom here. So so characters are defined now by a couple of different things. PCs. So you're defined by how you look, what your space is like. So you know how you described your space as a nest last time? That like was so evocative. I was like, oh man, I definitely need to have different versions of that. What you would tell people that you are and what you've heard people call you, right? And then each of these
There's a lot of potential in there, and I'm curious what the other adjectives are. So success.
Oh, thank you. So what you would tell people you are, tender gives you an extra move. So if you're tender, when you press skin against skin to make your point, you or they may gain hope. Right? Cool little snippy move. Just designed to, when you do the thing that you say you are, you get a bonus. I've heard others call me judgmental, is your longing trigger. It's where you get your stat, how you pull your stat in. So if you're, what's a good one here? I like clingy. If you've heard other people call you clingy, you get stat that you can roll to get bonuses when you feel abandoned. So like it's about generating this like, man, maybe it should be I tell people. Ooh, interesting. I'm just going to put a quick thing here. I tell people. Because then that verb is a little bit stronger and it gets on the table. I don't know. We'll look at that. So your look and your space at the moment generate history questions. So if you're beautiful but you live in a secluded space, your history questions are: which of you has lied about the way you feel for me, and which of you have I caught digging through my stuff?
I like those.
Thank you. The issue is they don't have that past and future focus at the moment. They're only past focused. They do hopefully all generate obligation. I'm going to just color these to make it a little bit easier while we're showing it here. So these are the adjectives for looks and space, and then these are the questions that generate from it. Yeah, a wiry person. Which of you has stood beside me when you knew better? I like a lot of what it's doing, but I feel like I need to get more out of it. I feel like I need to wring more out of these, especially because they're very much like Monster of the Week spawns in that you do them, they establish your relationships, and they get the fuck out of the way.
Which I feel like isn't a bad thing for Bones to do, to just be a character establishment thing and then get out of the way. And then leave it to players to echo them later if they were interesting enough for players to want to echo. I don't know.
Yeah. Sorry, keep going. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yep, no, that was about the end of my thought. I wasn't really going anywhere with it.
Nice. Going. So I'm kind of happy with the format, which is something happened that has created a point of tension between us in some way, or has created a point of support between us. I really don't like this one. Which of you has shared their dreams with me? Because I don't think it has any obligation to it, but we're going to work on that. Oh boy.
So like Blake is saying in the chat, maybe they should be prompts for either the players or the GM. It sort of makes sense to me, more than getting experience for tapping it or spending it or something. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. Is like, because the way I've got it set up, they are totally prompts. My history are totally prompts. They have no mechanization behind them. They're not meant to. One of my ideas is that that second history question about, like, because they're really active stuff, like which one of you has stolen something from my room, or which one of you took my old bed and left me to sleep on the floor. Those things are really good because as a GM, you can be like, let's start with that scene. Let's start with the scene of you figuring out that someone stole something from you, or you coming out of the room and you catching them like digging through your stuff. But they're not ever mechanized, which I'm kind of okay with. But I'm wondering,
for me, I'm going, if something like, you went through my space, or what was the awkward one? Which of you knows that I've lied about my past or something? I would try to bring that up in game, because that's such interesting flavor text to me that I'd want to see it more. But I don't know if it needs to be mechanized, really.
And this goes back to one of the questions that came up really early about like player choice, right? About is it important? So at the moment, what I'm saying to players is you're picking your history questions based on what you look like and what your space is like. The players are given a single history question, and then they have to interact with that. They have to ask that to the table. Is that okay?
I feel like it is. I mean, I don't see any of those that I would go, nope, I hate this question, I refuse. Rage quit. Or something where I know in some of the ones where it has a series of questions, I'm like, only half of these make sense, so I'll pick that half. Or something where it is kind of picking what flavor your character has, but here you pick your adjectives sort of knowing what questions they're going to bring up, or it's defining the adjectives for you in an interesting way.
Maybe that's the point. The other thing we need to bring up as well is that none of this is unique by design. It's meant to be interesting if you have two awkward people on your group. So because then you're defined as much by where you're similar as where you're different. So combinatorial explosion, right? I've got 4 things. They've got about 7 to 8 choices in each thing, which means there is like no chance that 2 PCs will pick exactly this, or 2 players will pick exactly the same character, right? But it does mean that if I'm beautiful and you're beautiful, but I live in a bare space and you live in a meticulous space, that should mean something. Or hell, if I'm beautiful, you're beautiful, we both share the same space, we have the same bedroom, but I'm tender and you're sincere, that should mean something. The problem is if we picked that, if we were like, oh, we both look the same, we both have the same space, we're both getting the same history questions.
Part of me is going, but is that even really an issue? Because I guess you could have an all beautiful team. But I know that my approach to games is, so this person's doing this. I'm going to pick not quite the opposite of that, and we'll riff on each other interestingly, sort of thing, where I don't want to double up with people unless we've decided beforehand. So we're all Goblin Paladins. Let's do this.
Fuck yeah, Goblin Paladins. Sorry, got to change my game to Goblin Paladins. Be right back. So you're right. Like, I don't think it'll come up very often, but when it does, I'm worried that it'll make people think that they're not supposed to, or I'm worried that it'll drag at the. So it'll be like,
I mean, do you want to encourage them to pick the same adjectives?
I want like maybe 1 or 2 people to cross over in 1 or 2 places, because I think it means something. I think it means something if there are 2 hard people in a group, and then you're like, what does it mean when you are both trying to be like the harder person? I don't know. I think it's one of those things I'm just gonna have to play test and just see how
My initial reaction is then you might want to have like a choice of 2 questions or something so they can pick the same one or not. But then again, just having the one and having them take it in different directions could also be really interesting. So I don't know.
Oh my god. No, you're super right. Like, that's the point, right? They're the same, they're similar. But it's not about the question, it's about the answer. And so just because the questions are the same doesn't mean the answer has to be the same. The problem is, at the moment, and this is something I was going to mention regarding Blake's comments earlier in the chat, which is that the problem with saying, yeah, but history can just be a prompt and then the table can do the work, is that why am I making the table do the work? The table should be like, I don't know, it should be assisted in doing this. So this was a language problem that I had very early on in this, which is that I don't want to ask the question, which of you knows I've lied about my past? The question I want to ask people is, one of you tell me about the time I lied to you about my past. Like, I want it to be like, tell me the story. But that is such a janky piece of language.
Well, and that puts a lot of weight on the person answering, and also has the odd consent thing too.
That's also true.
Because then you have to kind of hash it out between yourselves how that happened.
Yeah. And so maybe that's a comment that's not put in the language. Like, it's a bit in the text that says, figure out the story between you. Because that's something Apocalypse World doesn't ever say. Where is it?
Well, yeah, and that makes sense too, because in ones that have a really bare bones prompt, I still end up going like, so who wants this? Oh, okay, so this happened this way? No, okay, your idea is better. And we hash out the story between us, even if the game says we don't need to. So if it did say, I would feel less like I was breaking the game.
That's so true. So it says, as an MC, pay attention to the character, how the character's histories are developing. This is great stuff. Jump in with questions and contributions of your own. Hey, when Dune left Keeler bleeding, was that the time that Preen attacked the Holding or a different time? So Apocalypse World doesn't say it in the language of history. It says it in the text as like, you should, as the MC, ask questions and build on the answers. Like, it's part of your principal stuff there, right? Interesting. So yeah, maybe I don't need to. Maybe I don't need to have language that says and then build on it, because I should just leave it to players. Build it on or don't.
I mean, I'd probably put a throwaway line in there saying, yeah, and how did this happen, sort of thing, because I want to know, but I'm not sure if it's actually necessary. So, feelings.
Interesting. Okay.
I'm not sure if the line's actually necessary or not.
Yeah.
I'd be curious to know if there are groups who see those prompts and don't immediately hash out how it happened, because I haven't seen them yet.
I know, right? They're certainly not part of SBAC. So, second question is, my current histories don't extend forward. They have implied thing, like which of you has stolen something from my room implies a scene at some point where someone finds out about it or something like that. But it's not. It's up to the table whether they want to interact with that or not.
Well, and I feel like to some extent having it be up to the table if they want it to come back is sort of a good thing, because like that one about we went through my wrecked house together has really interesting backstory implications and could have future story implications, but it could also just be kind of a tense thing in between the characters that never really comes up, and that's also interesting to me.
Yeah, okay, cool. So
basically, I have no answers.
No, you're not wrong though. Like, so you are definitely one of the people like this game is for. You are the audience for this game, which is my friends that I'm going to play it with. Because let's face it, it's never gonna be a worldwide success. It's just something we're doing together, which I'm okay with. So the fact that you like it is a good sign. So actions, not facts.
I mean, in fairness, I was looking at it going, oh, okay, so Theo would have been awkward and comfortable, and then how would I spin that into things? So I'm finding ways to wedge myself into the corners, which is what I look for in games.
Can you unpack that for me? What do you mean by wedging yourself into corners?
So in non-tabletop role-playing, this came up that I prefer groups that have a really clearly defined concept, because if there's lines, then I can find kind of a corner to wedge myself into. If it's whatever goes, just pick your character and we'll run with it. I'm like, okay, but what do I hook myself onto? There are no lines. I need a wall to pin my character against and then define that corner.
I am 100% with you. Yeah, no, super with you on that one. Okay, so reasons we need history. Shared backstory and pre-existing connections. I feel like most of them do that. I'll go through that later. Player motivation, establishing teamwork, conflict, or shared motivation.
To loop that back into tabletop role-playing,
yes,
when you said that a monstrous would have to be very human and everything, I was like, I'm going to play a vampire who really needs a retirement plan, because that is a weird corner that I can make my own and decorate with bats.
It was the first time I've ever like really put character generation restraints on people. And I said to Lauren, like, I don't know if I should do it. Like, I should just trust these people. And Lauren was like, nah, do it. Give them something to aim for. All right, let's do it.
I love when people do that, because it gives me an idea of what they're looking for. And then there's a framework that I can, find an odd spot and be that spot.
So, setting and tone. One of the things I really like about my history questions at the moment is that they are basically the moves, but in a question form. So, like, which of you has dug through rubble with me? Which of you has stood beside me? Which of you hasn't stood beside me? Which of you's left me alone? Like, that's... I feel like they're good tone stuff, like about intimacy and about survival and stuff, which is, yeah. Because this is going to be one of the first bits of fiction generation that players do.
Yeah, and I'm just nodding, but that all makes sense to me, and I agree, because they seem very hooked into the story that you will then make.
So the question is about history. So I'm not going to use it as a stat. I'm just going to use it and then let it hang there, and if people want to deal with it, they can. We talked about developing history, about like, how do you write more of them at the end of a session?
That was going to be my next question. Do you generate more bonds or whatever later on?
What do you think?
I don't know. I was curious what you had come up with.
So I think that the game will generate more stories with more connections by virtue of the fact that it's a game about connections, right? It's a game about working with people, which means that, but I don't think there needs to be like a thing for, I will say honestly, that scene at the end of Apocalypse World sessions where you say, pick someone and give them history +1, they know you better, or give someone history -1, they know you worse. I fucking hate, because it's always an arbitrary choice. It's never interesting. It's the least interesting part of the story. No one ever goes like, oh, Keeler and I fought side by side. Yeah, but that's not really who I am. So I'm going to give you history -1. And everyone goes, ooh, at the table. Like, no one fucking cares. It's never the interesting part.
I'm going, in the one game I played, was a moment where I said, I think that this character knows me best. And the table went, no, that's not true. It's this other character. And I'm like, no, you're all wrong. And it was entertaining, but
that is good. But that was when you set it up at the beginning, right? That was when you were setting up history at the beginning?
No, that was an end of session 1 where they were like, oh, but you interacted more with this other character. I'm like, okay, but our background was that this is how we interact, and we did more of that. This other character saw a side of me they hadn't before, and therefore they get hex +1. And the whole table was like, no, you didn't interact with them so much. And it was interesting. But like I was thinking that I feel like we were kind of coming at the same question in the same way, where I was going, the bonds are going to change and everything, but to what extent do you need to actually put those on the character sheet? I don't know. Because, yeah, a lot of how Hex moves doesn't make any sense to me. We ended up kind of house ruling it that if you hit 3 and it resets, that means that you unlock a scene of your relationship evolving, because otherwise it just makes no sense at all, and I hate it.
It's so Vincent Baker's spoken a lot about it, and I understand what he's saying, and it's how he approaches a certain part of relationships, which is that you know them differently on a different level. The problem is the game doesn't really reflect that well. Like, I totally get what he's saying about relationships, but I don't think it syncs with the mechanics as well as I want to.
Well, and having only read the player-facing materials and not the book itself, that wasn't obvious at all. And I was going, so if I interact a bunch with this one character, then we know each other worse. That makes sense, except it doesn't.
I think it actually came from like a forum post or something. Like it's that tangential to the actual text.
I hate that so much. I mean, he's done good stuff, but I hate that so much, and that's on the record now.
Yep. He watches it. No, doesn't.
If he watches this, then I'm sorry, and I'm also, sorry. Why are you aware of my existence?
So let's talk about. So maybe I want an end of session move, but not a bonds move. So maybe there's something in there about like at the end of a session, pick someone that has made you feel like you belong. Tell that person blah blah blah. Pick someone who has made you feel something else. I don't know. Or maybe like, I always hate the ones that are like, pick this and then this, because like the Apocalypse World one, it's like, I don't think anyone knows me better, so I'm just going to pick someone at random. Doesn't feel right for me.
I was just thinking that I like the idea of having bonds come up again, like at the end of the session, if a new bond makes sense, then write that. But I don't feel like there needs to be a mechanical tie to it, really, because to me, having a new bond is enough reward in itself. But I don't know if other people feel that way. Because I like having a thing on my sheet that says that we're buds or we sabotage each other or something. But I'm not sure if that's a baked-in reward to other people.
So, is there value in an end of session move that says write a new bond, like write down one of the stories from this session as a new piece of history?
Yeah, I like that whole new bond or evolving bond sort of thing, but when it ties into mechanics, it just feels weird to me, and in a way I'm not totally sure how to resolve.
Interesting. Interesting.
I mean, XP sort of makes sense, but it's also sort of weird.
Like, I love the idea about bonds being used for love letters to tie you back in. I actually have a different mechanic that I'm really happy with my love letters or tying people back in thing.
What's the mechanic? You can't just drop that and not explain.
Oh, thank God. Okay, so core mechanic for the game is now about this thing called longing. So I'll bring up my sheet for you so that you can see how it works.
I was going to ask what that meant too, but I thought it might be off topic. So yes, talk about your game.
Let's
got to do it now.
So this is Raj. Raj is beautiful, lives in a secluded or has a secluded space. Would tell you that they're tender. Others would tell you that I am that Raj is clingy, right? That's who Raj is. Now, there are these two triggers. Raj can long for others, like desires intimacy. Longs for other people to be part of his life when he is bitter, hurt, anxious, frustrated, or sad, which everyone has, or when he feels abandoned because he's clingy. Right? On board so far? Cool. So what happens is we all start at 0. When Raj feels bitter, hurt, anxious, frustrated, or sad, he can take a point of longing. If it's a really big thing, he can take 2. And that's like a player choice thing, right? Like, how many do you want to take? Is this really important to you? And if 2, I'm thinking of a mechanic for taking 2, but I feel like if you take 2, it should just be something that like stops the table and be like, whoa, hold on, we need to like break this out. We need to have a scene about this. Oh, maybe that's it. Maybe if you feel that way, you take 1. But if you tell someone that you feel that way, you can take 2. Yeah.
So like what is longing, I say?
Okay.
I'm still not quite sure what this mechanic does.
Chill your boots. So what happens is, let's go to our procedure. Is this moves? Yeah, no problem moves. When you make a move that demands a roll, everyone who is making the move chooses to spend between 1 and 3 longing. And so when you spend it, what you're saying is, I am investing my need for other people in this role. I am opening myself up. I am being vulnerable in this role.
Oh my goodness, longing makes so much more sense than bonds.
Yes. So thank you. You make yourself vulnerable between, I guess it's really between 0 and 3, isn't it? You can spend up to 3 longing to show that like that is your scale of vulnerability, and then roll 1d6 each and add the number you spent. Take the group's 2 highest results to see how the move resolves. And what that means is that if you and I roll together, or if Raj and Theo roll together, right, and we are, let's say you and I, we're trying to forget the war. We're playing Monopoly. I always love that scene, right? Playing Monopoly in the bunker somewhere. If I say, well, I'm going to be really vulnerable in this scene or in this move, and I'm going to spend 3 longing, and you say, well, I don't have any, so I'm going to spend 0 and just not be as open. If you get the lower result, which you probably will because you're rolling less than me, you get the good stuff. You get to remember what you're struggling for. You get this like simple moment with me that works for you, right? Because I have become more vulnerable and you haven't met me in that vulnerability, I get screwed. Which means that because I'm open and vulnerable, my mind travels uneasily to the things that I've lost. And so I either burn a couple of scrap to like get over it, like maybe that last can of Coke that we've got sitting in like buried in the snow, I like crack that. Or, something will happen to interrupt the scene.
So I'm really curious how that would play out in game, but I like that idea that either it's reassuring to both of you or one of you does the emotional labor for the other and is worse off for it, because that is cool.
Yeah, that's pretty much the idea. So the more vulnerable person does the emotional labor and is worse off for it. But if you're both vulnerable, then you get like massive bonuses. You get all the good shit. Because if 2 people are vulnerable with each other, you can actually achieve things together. Anyway, so that's the way longing works, right? Take 2 when you tell someone that you feel away. You take 1 when you feel it quietly to yourself. Then you've got this thing down the bottom called hope. Now, the way hope works is easily described by this. Hope restricts your maximum longing. Basically, when you are when you don't have hope and good feelings, you can't make yourself vulnerable for people. You close yourself off. Right? So one way to get broken is to engage in the violence move. So let's have a look at our violence moves. I think it might be the top one. Yeah, when you become the war. So when you become the war, you indulge in unrestrained violence and become broken. And what that means is that you do what you want. You get the thing that the violence takes you, but you can no longer make yourself vulnerable to people until you build yourself back up. That makes sense?
Yeah, that's neat. It's another one where I'm like, I'm really curious how this would play out, but it's got a lot of potential, and I kind of want to see it.
So you've got a single stat. It's a rolling stat. It's exciting to me, and I like it. It's built off Vivian Faison. It's built off Vivian Faison's Liberté engine. Mine is a little bit more targeted to the feeling I want to generate, whereas his is about like emotional explosiveness. But I dig it. What was the point we were making about this?
I have no idea anymore, except maybe how you change bonds. I don't know. There was a point.
Yeah. No, there was a point, which is that was the point about you asking about my love letter mechanic? Yeah. So bringing people back in. So bringing people back in is basically because you've been away from people, you want to spend time with them, right? So you set your longing to the maximum, and then you make a roll to figure out how. I haven't written the move up yet because I haven't had a multi-episode run yet. You make a roll to see how well you've been doing on your own. And if you want to spend emotional vulnerability on that roll, you can, but you're rolling on your own. So it's like a little bit more complicated. And basically it's, do you come back to them with a lot? Do you come back to them with nothing? Or do you come back to them needing stuff?
Wait. So you can spend emotional vulnerability to improve rolls at the cost of becoming cold and hard?
Exactly.
That is cool. I like that.
That's basically the idea. So I still don't like the name Longing like exactly, but it's the best name I've been able to come up with because emotional vulnerability is a shitty stat.
Yeah, I'm not off the top of my head coming up with a better word for it.
Yeah.
Longing seems to evoke the sort of thing you want once you explain it. Which
like is fine, right? Because that's how a lot of stats work. And I'm okay with a little bit of explanation. Yeah. So one of the things I was thinking is an end of session move is like pick someone with whom you've spent time and like raise their hope, but that's basically what these small who I am moves do, which is like, you know, I'm tender, so when I press skin against skin to make my point, I can raise your hope. Like there's no point having another move for it. I really like sympathetic. Wait, no, that's not the one I want. Sincere is good when you tell someone the ugly truth. I like that one.
I like those ones that have you or they may gain hope because that implies a lot of interesting fictional stuff.
Yeah, well, that's like all of them is the intent is that one of you gets something from it. So it's none of these can be done on your own. Even the faithful one, you have to involve someone else in your rituals. If you have the Bible out on your lap, that doesn't mean anything. If you put out your prayer mat and you face Mecca, like that doesn't mean anything. It's you have to get someone else involved.
I love that because in a lot of games I'm like, I need a private scene to do this, but I don't want to be a scene hog, so I'll just ignore it. And there it's. So I include someone, and therefore I want to do the thing.
This is not a game about private scenes. This game doesn't want private scenes. It doesn't ask for private scenes at all. It shouldn't.
Yay.
Now, that said, that means that when a group generates a private scene, like that's going to be something else, right? Like that's going to mean something. because yeah, it's going to be really special.
Yes, I nod along to all of that. That sounds good.
So let's talk about let's keep talking history. So
I've dragged you off topic long enough, but I can't anymore.
I fucking love it, man. I love it. We're approaching now. We won't go for forever, even though I really could spend this time talking with you forever. You're amazing. Let's talk about what history needs to do. So in this game, so this is a game about people and about connections and about external pressures generating internal conflict. So as you found out when you played it, there is never enough food to go around. Right? That's the intent. At best, you can all get by. But if someone wants to get better, if people want to grow and people want to like get better, if you've lost hope, if you're hurt, if you're injured, you need to get rid of this really communal resource. If you want to get out of the war, if in the end, to generate stash, you've got to take huge chunks of this shared resource and make it your own in order to escape. Otherwise, the best you're going to do is just get by for another day. So the question is, in a game that is about that, what does history need to do?
So the fact that it's so much about intimate moments and then also ultimately screwing these people over for yourself implies a lot of really weird loaded history that, I don't know, it seems like history needs to provide both reasons why you care about them and reasons why you're willing to leave them behind, and that's a weird double load for it to do.
Yeah, you're super right. I need reasons for them to leave people behind. But at the moment, there is, so that's that character motivation thing, right? Which is that at the moment, there's no reason that you wouldn't just live in scarcity forever and be like, no, we're best friends.
Yeah, because I know from my establishing questions in the playtest we did, I was going, oh, Theo likes these people because they don't use him as outwardly, so he's knocking himself out to be helpful to the team so that they'll still like him, which is a bad cycle to be in. And then I'm going, so how will I ultimately decide that they're not worth my time and I can steal their stuff to get away? That seemed like an odd jump to make.
How will I ultimately decide that they're not worth my time and I need to get away? That's really interesting. So that's got to be... One of the history questions has to be about your interaction with these people, and the other one has to be about getting out.
Which, in the context of a completely different game, hi David Rothbetter, if you're watching, is the why wouldn't I just give up all of my own goals to help the team? There needs to be encouragement for you being selfish to some extent, given that that's the win state. Oh, that was Yumi and the zombie, where my zombie was accidentally way too focused on the family and had none of her own goals, which broke the game.
Okay, cool. So you mean the zombies are in playtest phase right now, isn't it? Okay, cool. So the experience that you had was, because let's unpack this, because this is a problem that I can come up against.
The way we had it, the non-changed characters have their own desires that if they forsake them entirely and just give up on them, kind of throws them into a darkest self sort of thing. But the changed it doesn't. So my changed up ended up kind of giving up all of her own goals to try to keep the family together, which the game wasn't prepared to deal with, which is a really dysfunctional way to live, but it's also a legit, real way to live. And the game wasn't prepared to deal with that. And so going, how do you, I suppose, keep the game from encouraging you to just subsume all your own goals to trying to keep the people you're living with safe. Wait, did I actually say the sentence I was thinking of? There needs to be some degree of selfishness maintained in your character. And I feel like in the original playtest, that was sort of something you had to bring to the table yourself, not something the game encouraged.
All right. That's really cool because so self-sacrifice is a valid story arc and is an interesting story arc, and you can tell the story about the person who decided they weren't going to join their family and they were going to die here and gave everyone else their stuff and was like, no, you go. Like, here, take all my stash. You go. I will stay here alone. But that needs to mean something, and it doesn't if you haven't decided what they're sacrificing. So,
because as the original rules, and I don't know how they've changed, right? It seemed like leaving was sort of the heel turn of the game, as opposed to the thing you should be aiming for.
Yeah, so that's the same thing. So leaving is the aim. The aim is getting out of there. And the reason, do you reckon it's worth just saying, like, having a question, which is why are you getting out of here? Or like, who's waiting for you? Or
that would be cool. Because when you said, meeting up with their parents, I was going, dang, did Theo even have parents to meet up with? And establishing that could be an interesting motivator, because that kind of asks you to come up with your reasons for wanting to leave instead of just wanting to live with your found family forever.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the reasons you want to leave is because you're in the middle of a fucking war zone. Like,
I mean, yeah, there's that for sure.
Place to live. But this is like, it's a slice, right? It's a so like the player's agenda at the moment doesn't cover that, and that's interesting.
Is there a player agenda at the moment?
Yeah, there's a player agenda when we fucking played, dog.
I don't remember.
At the top of the.
It's been a while.
It's at the top of the character sheet. When you don't know what to do, portray a scarce, crumbling city, fill the characters' lives with drama and peril, hope for the best in the face of the worst, play to find the character's edges.
None of those say play to find a way out, which I feel like is an important thing to add in if you want that to be the thing we're driving toward.
Fuck. Yes, you're right. Maybe hope for the best in the face of the worst is... I don't want to add a fifth one. 4 is already a lot. All right. Player agenda. Getting out. Maybe. All right. No promises. Maybe. I might put that in, but I do need to put in something like, so in Night Witches, how you answer the question like, who do you write to, or something like that? Maybe there's something about that, which is like, who do you miss the most? Who are you hoping to see when you get out of here?
I lean toward the who are you hoping to see when you get out of here, or who's waiting for you, more than who do you miss the most.
Who's waiting?
Because who do you miss the most could be like my dead brother, and that's kind of a dead end story-wise.
Dead end.
Puns.
Okay. Who do you? Who is waiting for you? Who is waiting for me? And then the question is, so one of the things that the character generation does at the moment is every choice you make generates a part of your playbook. This is something I said to Haley and V, which is they innovated having 2 halves of playbooks in Alas for the Awful Sea, and I'm doing 4 choices because I'm so much better. So at the moment, your look and your space generate history questions. Your who you are generates a move, and who others think you are generates your longing trigger. What should who is waiting for me generate? Another history question?
Maybe. Or maybe it kind of generates a motivation on its own.
So
because if that's
playbook stuff.
Well, I'm going that provides you a motivation to ultimately steal everyone's stuff and run away. So I don't know. Given that it seems like the only way to generate enough stash is to kind of hoard the group's resources and pretend you're not doing that.
I mean, yeah. I mean, not even pretend you're not doing that. Just fucking do it. Just do it. Just be true about it. Okay, cool. So who's waiting for me? I will think about whether I want to mechanize that in any way, but otherwise I think it's going to be really useful as a question. I think it's going to be really useful to put that on character sheet.
I can see it going both ways, and I'm, again, to repeat myself ad nauseum, curious how it would play out, whether that generates the desired effect or not. But I feel like having it there implies that you do have compelling reasons to leave, because it's not, no one's waiting for me, what will I do? It's, there is a way out, I just need to get there.
Because that's part of hope for the best in the face of the worst, right? Is that the truth of the matter and the reality of this situation is that refugee camps are, and I say this as an Australian, often not better than the places that people flee, right? Which is a really, really sad reality. But we have to look at it from this perspective with hope. From inside the city, you have to look outside. It has to be the land of milk and honey. This was part of my original design stuff in like episode 2, I think, of this series.
I remember seeing that. But I must admit, when I saw that agenda thing, I was thinking of it as a more immediate sort of thing. The, like, we're going to do this thing and it's probably going to fall flat, but what if we get all the food we need and we don't have to go scrounging for 2 days?
That's because you're so narrow-minded, right? It's both.
I know.
You're so bad at games. No, you're like my favorite. You're the best at everything. And
yeah, so I have a literal streak, and that definitely was in play.
Okay, cool. So I'll need to include that when I describe the agenda to players. I need to be like, hope for the best in the face of the worst. This is both a micro and a macro thing. This is why you get up every morning. You get up every morning because you hope that today will be the day that you leave. But at the same time,
yes,
you dig through the rubble because you hope it'll be the day that you find batteries, or you hope it'll be the blah blah. Right? Cool.
That is good language for that. I approve.
Okay, cool. So the question I need to answer is, how will I ultimately decide they're not worth my time and I need to get away? And the question I should ask is, who is waiting for me outside the city? And my options should be stuff like small families, like people that are important to you, right? Families and friends and animals, like pets and shit like that, right? Things that people can connect with.
And I'm making affirmative noises with my mic off, so you can't hear them, but yes.
I feel that. Okay, cool. Cool. So, what hasn't history done in games that when you've played it, you've been like, oh, I really want this to do more of this?
One thing that kind of annoys me about a lot of history questions is they establish how you feel about a character, or how you at some point interact with a character, but not sort of a mutual relationship. And I kind of want the history to build a relationship, because like ones that say, so we're siblings, but we kind of hate each other, or something is so loaded and it's got a lot of roleplay potential. But ones that are just, so I've heard a lot about them, the end. I'm going, so what do I do with that?
So what do you need for it to establish a relationship?
You're making me do all the thinking. And that's perfect and also cruel. Oh.
Because the question is, should it be like blank and I? So at the moment, here's the question. Let's talk about my prompts, because we can do this with examples really easily. So my prompt is, 3 beautiful, which of you has lied about the way you feel for me? Does it generate anything to say? That's it. Blank and I lie to each other about the way we feel.
I like that, because as much as unrequited, love is a really fun thing. mutually unrequited, where it's not actually unrequited, you just think it is kind of my fictional jam.
Okay, so for the wild one, which of you has dug through my own destroyed house with me? It'd be Blank and I have searched through the wreckage of each other's homes.
Yeah, I like how mutual those are, because that's
Okay, mutuality.
getting at what I was thinking.
Mutuality. Mutuality is not a word, but that's okay. Okay, interesting. Interesting idea.
Yes.
So Blake made a really good question about like, does this need to happen in the game or could it be in a scene? And there are scenes for it. So like, you would remember, Ryan, the questions from Share What Little You Have, which are about like, how do you show me where you see us after the war and stuff like that? Or how do you show me what makes you feel beautiful? That sort of stuff. Like this question, how do you show me where you see us after the war, is generating that, but yeah, it's doing it in play rather than in part of character gen.
Well, and I don't know if it's what you're aiming for or not, but that implies that I see us sort of together after the war, and then that actually getting away is, and I'm leaving you behind. So there's an interesting juxtaposition of almost lying to yourself in there.
This game is like 80% lying to yourself and 20% lying to each other. It is like,
I like that.
it's like, because I'm focusing so much on human interaction, it's super loaded, which I dig. And I'm glad that you're on board for it. I'm glad that you're enjoying it. All right. So, mutuality is something I'll look into. I think that's really easy because that's just a language change, and it makes some of them really interesting. Like, yeah, which of you have I caught watching me from afar? I think it's really interesting when it's like, Blank and I have been caught watching each other from afar. Like, I think there's something to that. Oh, I didn't see a thing of that. That's who's gonna need a break. All right. So that's all the chats. Let me control those chats. So let's talk about our drawings here, which is, what does mutuality bring? So I think it brings things to play off where you're like, blah and I blah, blah, blah together, and someone joins in, and it's like, oh, that's, yeah. I think it confuses things a lot more in a really good way, in a really teenagey way. It does mean that like the space ones don't work for that, unfortunately, which is like, which of you has stolen something from my room doesn't make sense if it's which of like blah and I have stolen something from each other's rooms. Like, it doesn't, it's too convenient. Which of you is hiding something that belonged to my family doesn't work if it's mutual. Yeah, so maybe these ones will be mutual and these ones won't. I don't know. Maybe there's something to that. Yeah. Okay. So Ryan, let's talk about your game. What's your elevator pitch? What's your 30-second elevator pitch?
So this entire thing was just to get me to tell you what I'm working on.
Exactly. That's my secret.
What is my 30-second elevator pitch? Okay, so at some point you went to another world, the world that was perfect for you and where you belonged, and for whatever reason you were cast back out. So to what degree do you search to go back, or when are you willing to give up on that? And how will you either fight to maintain hope that you'll someday see it again, or try to live with the reality that you won't?
Holy shit. That is, fuck. I love it. That's super, super, super good. So how does history fit into that?
I feel like in that instance, history has to be sort of how you and other characters have attempted to cope with each other because you didn't come to the same place, you don't belong in the same place, but you're thrown together for whatever reason, and you have to find ways to survive. Because just living in a place that you know is wrong for you and that there's alternatives is sort of a daily choice to survive.
Cool. Holy shit. That is some darkness. Also kind of sweet. So
that is totally how I lean all the time, forever.
Yeah.
So
it's beautiful.
and because like Ryan has mentioned it in the chat, I have not played Change Lane the Lost, and I know very little of it, but probably sort of similar. I don't know.
The closest I've come to playing World of Darkness stuff was Katanas and Trench Coats with Ryan Macklin. Can recommend 10 out of 10 that game. I make an awesome oral sex joke and it makes me very happy. Because that's the kind of guy I am. So how has this discussion changed how you're going to implement history in that game?
I guess sort of my talking cemented to me that mechanizing bonds really doesn't work for me, and I shouldn't try to figure out a way to make it work just because that's how a lot of PBTA games go. And that, like you were saying, bonds have to be very forward facing as well to come up, because the ones where you establish them and they never come up again are just kind of flat. There needs to be some way that this is going to then rear its head again later.
Cool. Okay, so there needs to be a way it's going to and as we were talking about, are you happy with the idea that the only way it's going to come up again is fictionally, like that players are going to have to drive towards wanting to bring that up again?
I don't know. Part of me is saying if the players don't want to drive for it to come up again, then it didn't really have much weight to begin with. But I don't know if that's putting too much weight on players or what.
So I've never come up with a satisfactory answer for this, but that is my biggest thing about role playing games at the moment is how much do we help players to tell the story and how much do we leave it to them? You know, when we're talking with Haley, and I was like, there are games that ask you as a table to do all the design, and fuck those games. But at the same time, there are games that do all the design for you and leave you nothing, and fuck those games as well. Yeah. Really interesting. Really interesting. Cool. So the other thing that I always do at the end of drawing the LAP is I talk about the next event. I talk about the next thing that we're doing. So, for example, Homefront is doing a playtest tomorrow, my time. Tomorrow night Pacific time, I think it is. It's 6:30 Pacific time, which is 11:30 my time. Which is pretty cool. So I'm going to do another playtest, mostly to test the new longing mechanic, mostly to test how I express the game to people, and a little bit to test the history. Let's set a goal. Let's set a goal for my history. So what is a good goal, Ryan, to figure out if my history is working?
I guess at risk of parodying myself, that I think a history question was working if players wanted to play toward it again once they got narrative control of the game versus just answering the questions.
Okay.
But that's really kind of a wibbly wobbly one to actually look for in playtesting.
I don't think it is that hard. So let's look at playtest goals. 21st playtest goals. Oh, 21st playtest. Playtest on the 21st.
I was going to go, you had 20 other playtests? When do you sleep?
A second playtest goals. So the themes are one for history, one for stats, and one for the map, I think. Maybe. No, I don't like having a goal for the map, and that's done. So let's go for history. So let's say at least 2 scenes of characters engaging or resolving history conflicts.
That sounds both cool and attainable to me.
If I have 2 scenes of characters engaging in history conflicts, that tells me that people care about history, that it's influencing play. Does that sounds fair? That sounds fair. Cool. Fuck yeah. Do not sweat about rewriting World of Darkness, man. 1, someone needs to rewrite World of Darkness. 2, this is something I was talking to Philip Wessels about, Popper, on my chat with him, which is that you will bring so much to the game that no one else can because they don't have your lived experience. So, like, even if you just rewrote World of Darkness, you would highlight different things. You would speak to different things. It would be about different things. If someone wrote a game about people... So, all right, here's an example. In this game, which is about civilians in war, there have been 3 big media pieces about civilians engaging in war, in Australia at least. So there's Red Dawn, there's Tomorrow When the War Began, and there's Red Dawn again. In each of those, the focus is hardcore violence. The focus is civilians taking up arms to fight back. This is not about that. And like, my violence moves are, when you engage in violence, you fucking hurt everyone around you. But because I don't have a harm track, it's got nothing to do with you hurt them as in you physically punch them until they are sad. It's the fact that you were outwardly violent distances you from other people. And that's my lived experience with war and violence and stuff like that, right? So you can basically rewrite World of Darkness, and
I'm gonna rewrite the World of Dungeons, World of Darkness crossover. And if you can't picture that, then you're just not ready for my game.
There's a lot of D10s, I'm sure. You absolutely should. But like, I mean, even as lean as World of Dungeons is, if you rewrote that, you would highlight something different. And that's why it's so special.
There would be more. So how do you feel about the other players? And why can't you let them know that?
Oh my God. So playing Swords Without Master, right? And Haley finished with, it was really hard to do interpersonal scenes. And I was like, you're super right. But also, that's not what Swords Without Master is. And
but
also,
that's what all games should be about.
That's
if
what
I'm
all
playing
games should be about. It's because we're ASPAC Feels Club. That's what we do.
Well, and also, diverging into my brain weird stuff, you have strong feelings and you can't really access them or make them known very well. Deal with it.
I love that so much. So,
but also, I really now want to see a game where you punch people to make them sad, because you mentioned that, so that needs to be a thing.
Yeah, standard game design rules. I'm trying to do interpersonal Swords Without Master at the moment, and it's difficult.
I have no idea how you would do that, but I want to see how you would do that.
I don't know. It's really hard.
I have Swords Without Master thoughts that aren't relevant here, so I will sit on them. But
man, we got to do this every week. We should really do. Oh fuck, Ryan, you and I should hang out every fucking week, or like twice a week, maybe. Okay, so let's talk. What is your goal? What's your next game design goal?
I guess to figure out what I want history to do and actually write things that seem to at least edge in that direction. Because currently I have no history anything written down because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, and everything seemed kind of
Cool. So we're going to do the first draft of your history. When are we going to have that done by?
Oh my goodness, are you my English teacher or something?
Yeah.
Probably not in the next couple weeks, because I really need to get Tall Pines ready to play, and that one is going to require some adapting for me.
You absolutely do.
But after Tall Pines, then I will do it.
So what dates? What date? Give me a date.
Oh my goodness. I am not good at this.
Be realistic.
It is good that you are forcing me, but also I hate you.
And I'm going to fucking ping you about it too. And we're probably going to get together and have a chat about it. It's going to be great.
Man, when is my Tall Pines game?
30th, I think.
Then let's say by the 6th, I will have at least a rough draft sort of form.
6
because that gives me a week. I should be able to decompress.
6 August, first draft of history for what's your project called? Have you got a name for it?
I don't have a name at all.
I called mine Unnamed Civilian War Game for like the
so far it's just Wayward PBTA.
For Wayward PBTA. Fuck, that's a good name. Wayward PBTA. All right. You're in my thing. I have that recorded now. I will hassle you about it.
And apologies for Sean and McGuire for totally ripping off the series. I have no original thoughts.
Man, I have so many feelings about that. And the truth is it's super not true.
It's awesome, and I want to.
What an exciting time. All right. We're going to let everyone go. I'm going to say goodbye at this point. Ryan, do you have any final thoughts on history or on PBTA game design?
History's super weird, dudes. I don't know.
It is, though. It is super fucking weird. All right. My final thoughts are the same as always, which is keep on drawing your owls, keep on giving a hoot. That's all you need to do.